Eira didn't notice the exact moment things started slipping. There was no dramatic breakdown, no single day where everything collapsed. It was quieter than that. Subtle. Almost invisible. The kind of change that hides inside routine until it becomes your normal. At first, it looked like discipline. She woke up early, even when her body begged for more sleep. She answered emails before brushing her hair. She stacked her day with tasks, convincing herself that every hour needed to be justified. There was always something to do, something to fix, improve, complete. And she did it all, because in her mind, slowing down meant risking everything. Her life in the United States had been built from effort. No shortcuts, no safety nets, just consistency and pressure. Freelance work gave her freedom, but it also demanded constant proving. If she didn't show up, someone else would. If she didn't deliver, she could be replaced. So she made a quiet promise to herself, don't stop. At the beginning, that promise felt powerful. It gave her direction. It made her feel in control. But over time, it stopped being motivation and started becoming weight. Her apartment reflected the life she was living. It wasn't messy in an obvious way, but it wasn't peaceful either. The kind of space that always felt mid-task. A mug on the table with dried coffee at the bottom. A blanket half folded on the couch. Her laptop always open, like it was waiting for her even when she stepped away. Even her rest looked temporary. Like she was only pausing so she could return to work. Most days blurred into each other. Wake up. Work. Eat quickly. Work again. Scroll mindlessly. Sleep late. Repeat. There was no clear boundary between effort and exhaustion anymore, only continuation. Eira told herself she was getting closer to stability. That this phase was temporary. That once she reached a certain point, more clients, more savings, more security, she would finally allow herself to breathe. But that point kept moving. Every time she got close, the target shifted. And she adjusted. Worked harder. Stayed longer. Pushed further. Because stopping didn't feel safe. There were small signs her body was struggling. She ignored most of them. The headaches that came more often. The tension in her shoulders that never fully disappeared. The way her eyes burned after hours of staring at a screen. The fatigue that sleep didn't seem to fix. None of it felt serious enough to justify slowing down. So she didn't. Instead, she normalized it. Told herself this is what hard work looks like. This is what building something from nothing feels like. One afternoon, she sat at her desk trying to focus on a project that should have taken her an hour. 2 hours passed. Then 3. She kept rereading the same lines, making the same small edits, deleting and rewriting sentences that never felt right. Her thoughts felt slower than usual, like they were moving through something thick and heavy. She shook her head slightly, trying to reset. Focus, she whispered to herself. But focus didn't come. Frustration did. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, unmoving. For a brief moment, she leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. Not to rest. Just to escape the screen. But the moment her eyes closed, her mind got louder. You're wasting time. You should be done by now. Why are you so slow today? She opened her eyes again quickly, as if rest itself was dangerous. As if even a second of stillness would pull her too far away from the momentum she was trying to maintain. That evening, she skipped dinner without realizing it. Not intentionally. She just didn't notice. Time moved differently when she was working, faster, but also strangely empty. Hours passed, but nothing felt complete. Tasks blurred together, and by the end of the day, she couldn't clearly remember what she had actually done. Only that she had been busy. Constantly busy. A message notification pulled her attention. A client asking for a small revision. Simple. Quick. Nothing complicated. But when she read it, her chest tightened slightly. Not because the task was difficult, but because it was one more thing. And she already felt like she was at capacity. Still, she replied immediately. Of course, I'll take care of it. She always said yes. Even when she felt like she had nothing left to give. Later that night, the headache returned. Stronger this time. It sat behind her eyes, pulsing steadily. She rubbed her temples, trying to push it away, but it lingered. Her screen brightness suddenly felt too harsh. The room too quiet. Her thoughts too loud. For a moment, she just sat there. Not working. Not moving. Just, existing in the discomfort. Something inside her whispered a simple truth: you need to stop. But the thought didn't stay long. Because another one replaced it immediately. You can't. And that belief was stronger. Eira stood up and walked to the kitchen. She poured herself another cup of coffee even though it was late. Even though she knew it would make it harder to sleep. Even though her body clearly needed something else. Rest felt like surrender. And she wasn't ready to surrender. Back at her desk, she stared at the screen again. The same task. The same struggle. But this time, something felt different. Not in a dramatic way. Just a slight disconnect. Like she was there, but not fully present. Like her body was working, but her mind was slowly pulling away. She typed a few more lines. Deleted them. Typed again. Stopped. Her hands dropped to her lap. And for the first time, she didn't immediately try to fix it. Didn't force herself to continue. Didn't push past the resistance. She just sat there. Quiet. Still. Uncertain. It wasn't a breakthrough. It wasn't clarity. It was simply a pause. A small, unplanned interruption in the constant motion she had been living in. And even though it felt uncomfortable, it also felt honest. Eira leaned back in her chair again, staring at the ceiling this time. The room looked the same. Nothing had changed. But the way she felt inside it had shifted slightly. Like she was finally seeing something she had ignored for too long. She didn't quit that night. She didn't suddenly fix her schedule or transform her habits. She still believed she had to keep going. Still believed stopping was dangerous. Still carried the same fears. But something had cracked. A small awareness. A quiet realization. Not loud enough to change everything yet. But strong enough to stay. For the first time, Eira didn't just feel tired. She recognized it. And that recognition, as small as it seemed, was the beginning of something she didn't fully understand yet. Not an ending. Not a failure. Just the first step toward learning a truth she had been avoiding. That pushing endlessly wasn't strength. And maybe, just maybe, rest wasn't the same as quitting. The next morning didn't feel like a fresh start. There was no sudden clarity, no surge of motivation waiting for Eira when she opened her eyes. The same ceiling, the same quiet apartment, the same weight in her body, it all remained. But something inside her had shifted. Not enough to change her life overnight. Just enough to interrupt the pattern. Her alarm had already gone off twice. Usually, she would have forced herself up immediately, ignoring how heavy her body felt. But this time, she didn't rush. She lay there for a few extra seconds. Then a minute. Then more. It felt uncomfortable, like she was doing something wrong. Like every second she stayed in bed was something she would have to pay for later. Her thoughts started quickly: you're already behind. Get up. Don't start the day like this. But her body didn't move right away. And for once, she didn't fight it immediately. When she finally sat up, the tiredness was still there. Not dramatic. Just steady. Like it had settled into her bones. She stood, walked slowly to the kitchen, and poured herself water instead of coffee. That alone felt like a small rebellion. Her laptop waited for her on the table. Open. Silent. Expecting. She stared at it for a moment. This was usually automatic: sit down, start working, don't think. But now there was hesitation. A pause she didn't fully understand. Instead of sitting, she walked past it. Toward the window. She pulled the curtain slightly, letting the morning light slip into the room. It wasn't extraordinary. Just a normal day outside. Cars moving. A few people walking. The quiet rhythm of life continuing. Nothing urgent. Nothing collapsing. And that confused her, because inside her, everything always felt urgent. She leaned lightly against the wall and watched for a few seconds longer than she normally would. Her mind tried to pull her back. You're wasting time again. But the thought didn't land the same way it used to. It felt weaker. Eventually, she sat down at her laptop. Work didn't disappear just because she hesitated. Emails still needed replies. Tasks still needed attention. But something was different in how she approached it. She didn't rush into everything at once. She opened one task. Just one. And focused on it. At first, it felt slow. Uncomfortable. Like she wasn't doing enough. Her instinct was to multitask, to open multiple tabs, to respond to everything, to move faster. But she resisted that urge. Not perfectly. But intentionally. An hour passed. Then another. And something unexpected happened. She finished the task. Properly. Without redoing it 5 times. Without second-guessing every line. It wasn't perfect. But it was clear. Complete. Eira leaned back slightly, surprised. Not by the work itself. But by how it felt. Her mind wasn't as scattered. Her chest didn't feel as tight. The exhaustion was still there, but it wasn't controlling everything. Then the familiar urge returned. Do more. Keep going. Don't slow down now. She almost followed it. Almost opened 3 more tabs. Almost pushed herself back into the same cycle. But then she stopped. Not because she felt strong. But because she remembered how yesterday felt. The blur. The frustration. The quiet breaking point. And for the first time, she asked herself a question she usually ignored: what happens if I pause right now? The answer scared her. Because in her mind, pausing always led to falling behind. But she tested it anyway. Carefully. She closed her laptop. Not for the day. Just for a moment. The silence that followed felt loud. Too loud. Her hands didn't know where to go. Her mind searched for distraction. She almost reached for her phone out of habit. But she stopped herself again. She made tea. Slowly. Not while checking emails. Not while thinking about work. Just making tea, watching the water heat. Listening to the quiet sounds of the kitchen. Letting herself exist in something simple. When she sat down with the cup in her hands, the discomfort didn't disappear. Her thoughts were still restless. Still impatient. But beneath that, something softer started to surface. Relief. Small. Fragile. But real. Minutes passed. Nothing collapsed. No urgent messages. No missed opportunities. No sudden consequences for stepping away. That realization stayed with her longer than she expected. Because it challenged something she had believed for a long time. That if she wasn't constantly working, everything would fall apart. But it didn't. At least, not in those few minutes. When she returned to her laptop, her mind felt slightly clearer. Not fully rested. But less strained. She continued working. And again, the difference showed. Less friction. Less resistance. More flow. The day wasn't perfect. She still overworked at times. Still caught herself slipping into old habits, checking things too often, trying to do too much at once, pushing past signs of fatigue. But now, she noticed it. And noticing changed things. By the evening, she felt tired again. But it was different from before. Not the overwhelming, suffocating exhaustion that left her stuck. Just a natural kind of tired. The kind that made sense after a full day. She sat on the couch, staring at nothing in particular. No laptop. No phone. Just quiet. Her mind, for once, wasn't racing as fast. Thoughts came and went, but they didn't pile on top of each other the way they used to. And in that space, she understood something she hadn't allowed herself to see before. She hadn't been failing. She had been overextending herself beyond what was sustainable. There was a difference. And it mattered. Later that night, she picked up one of the sticky notes from her wall. It read, "Work harder. No excuses." She stared at it for a long moment. Then slowly, she peeled it off. Not out of rejection. But out of adjustment. She took a pen and wrote something new. Not louder. Not more intense. Just more honest. Work with energy. Rest when it's gone. She placed it back on the wall. And for the first time, her goals didn't feel like pressure. They felt possible. Eira didn't transform overnight. She didn't suddenly become perfectly balanced or completely free from overworking, but she had taken something important back. Choice. She wasn't running blindly anymore. She was starting to listen. To her body. To her limits. To the quiet signals she had ignored for too long. And in that listening, she found something she didn't expect. She wasn't falling behind. She was finally stabilizing. Because pushing without stopping had never been strength. It had been survival. And now, she was slowly learning how to live beyond it. The change didn't arrive all at once. It didn't feel like a breakthrough or a turning point anyone else could notice. From the outside, Eira's life looked almost the same. Same apartment, same work, same routines. But internally, something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer running on empty without realizing it. Now, she could feel the difference between effort and exhaustion. And that awareness changed how she moved through her days. Mornings became quieter. Not slower in a lazy way, just more intentional. She still woke up with responsibilities waiting, but she didn't meet them with immediate urgency anymore. There was a small space now between waking up and starting work. A pause. Sometimes it was just standing near the window, letting light settle into the room. Sometimes it was sitting with a cup of tea, not scrolling, not thinking ahead, just being there. It felt unfamiliar at first. Almost undeserved. But she kept it anyway. Work didn't disappear. Deadlines still existed. Clients still expected results. The pressure hadn't magically faded. But Eira approached it differently now. She didn't stack everything at once. She didn't chase the feeling of doing enough by doing everything. Instead, she chose her focus carefully. One task at a time. One clear step forward. What surprised her most was how much better her work became. Not instantly. But consistently. When she wasn't overwhelmed, she could think clearly. When she wasn't drained, she could make better decisions. When she allowed herself to step away, she returned with more energy than she expected. It wasn't about working less. It was about working in a way that didn't slowly break her. There were still difficult days. Days where the old patterns came back without warning. She would overcommit. Overwork. Ignore the signs again. And by evening, she would feel it, that familiar heaviness, that quiet frustration with herself. Before, those moments would spiral. She would push harder, criticize herself more, try to fix it by doing even more. But now, she responded differently. She paused, acknowledged it, and adjusted. "You're tired again," she would think. Not as a judgment, just as a fact. That shift mattered more than she expected, because it removed the pressure to be perfect. She didn't need to get everything right every day. She just needed to notice when she was pushing too far, and pull back before it cost her everything. One afternoon, she found herself walking without a destination again. The city moved around her, busy, loud, alive, but for once, she didn't feel like she had to match its pace. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't calculating the next task in her head. She was simply moving. She passed by places she had seen 100 times but never really noticed. Small details stood out, the way sunlight hit the edge of a building, the rhythm of footsteps around her, the quiet pauses between noise. It wasn't anything extraordinary. But it felt different. Because she was present for it. Eira realized how long it had been since she felt that. Present. Not halfway in tomorrow. Not stuck in unfinished tasks. Just, here. That evening, she returned home with a sense of calm that didn't feel temporary. Not the kind that disappears the moment work begins again, but something steadier. Something she had built slowly, through small choices repeated over time. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Work was still there. But it didn't feel like a weight pressing down on her anymore. It felt like something she could engage with, without losing herself in it. She worked for a few hours. Focused. Clear. Steady. And when she reached the point where her energy began to fade, she noticed it immediately. The slight drop in focus. The slower thoughts. The subtle tension returning to her shoulders. Before, she would have ignored it. Pushed through. Forced herself to continue until everything felt heavy again. But now, she stopped. Closed her laptop. Not out of avoidance. But out of understanding. That simple act, closing the laptop before she reached exhaustion, felt like a quiet victory. Not because she had done less. But because she had protected what allowed her to keep going. She leaned back in her chair and looked around her apartment. It hadn't changed much. Still simple. Still small. Still filled with traces of her work and effort. But it felt different now. Less like a place of pressure, more like a place she actually lived in. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt peaceful. Eira rested her head back and closed her eyes, not to escape, not to recover from being completely drained, but simply because she could. Because rest was no longer something she had to earn by breaking herself first. And in that moment, a clear thought settled in her mind: she hadn't been afraid of quitting. She had been afraid of losing control. Afraid that if she stopped, even for a moment, everything she worked for would disappear. But now she knew the truth. Stopping wasn't the same as losing everything. Sometimes, stopping was how you keep it. Her journey hadn't ended. There were still goals ahead. Still growth, still challenges, still uncertainty. But now, she had something she didn't have before. A rhythm she could sustain. She understood her limits better. Respected them more. Worked with them instead of against them. And that changed everything. Eira opened her eyes and sat up slowly. The night felt calm. Not empty. Not rushed. Just, balanced. She smiled faintly, not out of excitement, not out of achievement, but out of quiet recognition. She was still moving forward. Still building her life. Still committed to her path. But she was no longer destroying herself to stay on it. Because quitting is walking away from what matters. But resting is how you stay strong enough to reach it. And for the first time, Eira wasn't just surviving her journey. She was steady enough to continue it, with clarity, with strength, and with the understanding that slowing down didn't mean she was falling behind. It meant she was finally moving in a way she could sustain.